Somebody asked me to explain what a fair value gap is. So in simple terms, fair value gap is simply an imbalance in price delivery. Whenever you see price delivering liquidity from one side of the market to another, just like in these examples, we have an unhealthy price action and a healthy price action. The only difference is that in a 3-candle price action, we want to see that the high of the first candle is linked with the low of the third candle. Just like you can see here, the high of this first candle is practically linked with the low of this third candle. Anytime price fails to connect the high of the first candle with the low of the third candle, leaving a gap in between, it creates an imbalance, and that imbalance needs to be corrected. So price will often come back and fill that gap before moving in the direction of the movement. Let me give you a practical example. Imagine you have a piece of a crayon and you're trying to paint a particular paint or a shaded area. You start by painting gradually until you fill up all the painting, and then you go back and fill up the little gaps that are left in between. This is almost the same thing happening on your price action. So whenever you see this kind of thing, you expect price to come back to this imbalance. In this case, we don't have an imbalance. This is a healthy price action, and price may not necessarily come back, fill up any gap, but this kind of gap may attract price to come back and fill it up. Now you can see a fair value gap, also known as an imbalance, on a live chart, always repeating itself. Look at this. The low of the first candle here, that's in a downtrend, is not connected with the high of the third candle. This is a fair value gap, and then price came back and enter this fair value gap before moving. It happens oftentimes. Price comes back and either fill it up or just retest it before moving forward. You can see this happening over and over again. In between this is a fair value gap. You can see this is a fair value gap, even though price never came to that. In between this is a fair value gap. You can see this. In between this is a fair value gap, and price actually came back and filled up that gap in between. You can see this happening over and over again. This is a fair value gap. Okay, there is an exact science for trading with this kind of information. I'm just trying to show you how fair value gap really works. And in between this is a fair value gap. You can see this is a fair value gap. You can see it's a fair value gap because price actually came back to fill it up before moving. Let me show you a healthy price action where there is no fair value gap, so you can see. Look at this. This is almost a healthy price action, even though there is a very little fair value gap in between them. But look at this particular one is a healthy price action because the high of the first candle is connected with the low of the third candle. You can see this repeating itself over and over. This is a fair value gap because we cannot see any connection between that. This is it. Look at this. You can see a fair value gap happening right here because price came back to fill it up in the future. Price came back and filled it up. We can see times where price never left a fair value gap with a healthy price action. So in a price action, we have a lot of fair value gaps, and a healthy price action where we don't have a fair value gap. Everything has been filled up. Look at this. There is no fair value gap in between this 1, 2, 3 candle because the high of the first candle is connected with the low of the third candle. So you can see this happening over and over and over. There is a fair value gap in between this, So this is simply how to identify a fair value gap. It is simply an imbalance. Price may often come back and fill up this kind of imbalance before moving up.